All right, let's get started here today. Welcome to, I guess this is the third workshop in the Transformational Shift Workshop Series. Today is all about tuning into your intuition and through that, expanding your vision. So today is kind of a stay cozy and warm kind of day. I think we have everyone that we're going to have. And before we really get into the meat of what we're doing today, let's just take a moment and we'll do a quick little arrival practice. So if standing is accessible to you in this moment or wherever you are, then I definitely invite you to go ahead and do that. I will be doing the same. And then I got my big chunky sweatshirt on here. And then slowly start to, let me adjust this camera. And we'll slowly start to add some shaking movement to our feet. So you can start just with your toes, feet, adding some shaking there. And then you can move up your legs. You can, shake in whatever way feels good to you in this moment. You can keep both feet on the ground and shake that way, or you can lift one at a time. And you can start to add some shaking to your hips. And then maybe to your hands, adding some shaking there. To your arms and your shoulders. Maybe you add a little bit of shaking to your head. Maybe doing some neck rolls. Just get a little bit of gentle movement there. We don't want to go too crazy with the neck and the head. And then go ahead and jump up and down. And just keep shaking it out a little bit. Awesome. And then when you're ready, you can come back to your seat. And we'll just go from here. All right. So, just going to share my screen with you guys. All right, so today is all about connecting with our intuition. We're going to be, exploring some things around this and getting into some practices as well. So just to recap a little bit, if you haven't had a chance to watch our last workshop, it was all about nervous system regulation and how that fits into the work that we're doing in this workshop series. And some things that we talked about were connecting with the body, creating safety in the body so that we can integrate our mindset work that we'll be doing next week. So just some ideas that we played around with and talked about were that when we come back into relationship with the body, we expand our capacity for life, for experiencing life and everything that it may bring our way. When we increase our capacity to deal with and manage stimuli and stressors, then we also increase our capacity for joy. And that's, like I said last week, nervous system regulation is really the cornerstone of a lot of the work that we'll be doing in this workshop series. It's so important to create a sense of safety for yourself when you're tuning into your intuition, when you're reframing your perspective and your mindset, when you're connecting with joy and pleasure. Those things don't really feel as effective or as possible when we're approaching them or trying to incorporate them into our lives from a place of insecurity and unsafety. Another thing we talked about was that the cues, signals, and sensations that we experience within our body is just information that the body is sending us. But sometimes we have a tendency to label certain sensations or certain experiences as good or bad. And today and throughout this series, I'm really going to encourage you to approach things from a state of non-judgment, from a place of observation. And then the last quick little recap is this idea that once we are connected with our body, once we do have an understanding of the signals that it sends us, or this language of the body that we'll talk about in a bit, once we have that connection established, we can start to make decisions based on that information that we receive. And I think this is such a powerful aspect of this work, because when we start to be able to make these empowered decisions based on the information from our intuition and from our, the signals and language that our body is speaking to us with, we don't have to rely as much on outside expert advice, because we feel so much more grounded and so much more confident in our own wisdom, in our own experience, and in our own needs as well. So today's workshop is really going to be all about understanding intuition, understanding different ways of connecting with your intuition. And we're really going to be focusing on more of a somatic approach today, kind of approaching intuition from this angle of connecting with your body and listening to what your body is telling you and kind of developing your intuition that way. And of course, there are lots of other ways, which I will briefly go over. But yeah, that's just kind of the intention for today, is to really ground ourselves in our physical experience and move from there. We'll be talking a little bit about aligned action, getting clear on your why, the role this plays in health and wellness, and what intuition has to do with your vision and your dreams and your goals. And as we're going through all of this information today, an idea that I would love for you to keep in mind and just play around with, sit with for a little bit, is this. It's that when you're connected with your intuition, you can make decisions from a more empowered place. You can listen, actually listen and understand the cues your body is sending you. And you can expand your understanding of what is possible for you. That feels really juicy to me. So let's get into it. What does listening to your intuition mean to you? And I love starting with these kind of questions, because the focus of my work is really getting people more in touch with themselves, their intuition, and their bodies, and helping them understand how they can navigate their own health and wellness from this position of empowerment. So what does listening to your intuition mean to you? And if you have a journal with you or a piece of paper, feel free to take a moment, pause here, and just kind of journal out what comes up for you when you think about listening to your intuition and taking action based on that? So when we talk about intuition, we're usually referring to an instinctive feeling that exists outside of conscious reasoning, right? It's this information that is coming from your higher or most authentic self. And when we talk about the higher self or the most authentic self, we're really talking about the self that is free of conditioning, the self that inherently knows and feels what is in alignment for you and understands what kind of path is most connected with your purpose. You know, what lights you up, what brings you joy. So when we talk about, listening to this self or making decisions based on the information that we receive from this self, we're really talking about connecting with the things that feel good. And we'll get into an activity later on about how to discern what feels good and what doesn't. And our body holds so much wisdom. It really does. And I think a lot of times in our society, we overlook this in favor of this external wisdom from experts or influencers. And when we do this, when we value this this wisdom that's coming from outside of ourselves, which, don't get me wrong, is really important sometimes. Educating yourself and gaining more knowledge about certain topics is absolutely important. A lot of times it can cause us to distrust our internal wisdom or become disconnected from ourselves, from our bodies, from our higher selves, right? And when we connect with this wisdom that our bodies have, we can then use that to have a greater understanding of what is in alignment and what is not. So why are we even talking about intuition? Why is this important? So a lot of times in coaching and in the healing space, there's this concept of your clients writing their own prescriptions. And we have prescriptions in quotes because it's not like medications. It's, shifts, it's adjustments, it's changes that we can make in our lives based on what is in alignment with where we want to be, who we want to be, how we want to feel. And it's based on this idea that you already know what you need to be healthy, to be happy, or satisfied, or content. But you just need some guidance in getting there sometimes. And when you're at the beginning of this journey, it can feel really overwhelming. And that's why we have spaces like this, right? Where you can have that support and have that guidance. But the more you develop your own intuition, the more you know how to ask the right questions, how to interpret the sensations and signals that you're getting, and how to really integrate that in your own life. And we're going to be talking a lot about that today and in upcoming workshops as well. And then connecting with the body. And I talked about this already a little bit, but when we connect with our intuition, we're coming into connection with our body as well. When we connect with the body and our inner desires and our intuition, we allow ourselves to open up to the possibilities that our body and our authentic self are asking for. But when we suppress the language of the body or don't make space for it, it manifests in other ways. It manifests as physical illness, mental illness. And from this place of connection with our body, we can make decisions that actually do support our physical and mental health. So another piece of this is being able to navigate your health and wellness from a place of alignment and empowerment. I know I'm using this word alignment a lot. It's a great word. It's probably my favorite word right now. And alignment basically means something that is nourishing you, supporting you, feeling good to you, giving you energy instead of draining your energy. And yeah, and there's so many different kinds of diets and exercise plans and advice. But by connecting with your intuition, you make it easier to navigate all of this because you are so in touch with what feels good to you that you can look at a diet that might come highly recommended, but you just know that's not going to work for you, that you might need some other kind of diet. Or, maybe all these people are telling you that you have to work out in a certain way, but because you're so in touch with your intuition and your body, you know that that's not actually benefiting you, and that maybe you need a different kind of exercise plan. And aligned action, again, it's action that supports your needs, your purpose, your joy, your health, and your happiness. And again, by connecting with our intuition, we have that greater confidence in our decisions. So if you're feeling very indecisive or very disconnected with what you want, because a lot of times I hear people say, well, I don't even know what I want. And it's this disconnection from what brings us joy and from what makes us happy that really causes this, this kind of confusion around that. Our intuition helps us also work through trauma and difficult emotions. Again, when we have that connection, we can more easily identify what's going on. What do we need to work through? What do we need to process? And what do we need to change? So there are lots of different ways of going through this process of connecting with your intuition. Some of you might be familiar with human design. Human design is amazing. If you haven't checked it out, there are so many websites where you can get your human design chart for free. It's basically this, for people who are like totally new to it, I kind of compare it to astrology or gene keys. It's basically kind of a system for discovering how you can best manage your energy, how you can best make decisions, tune into your intuition, all that good stuff. And for me, what I have found is that really working with your authority and getting connected with that in human design is very effective for developing your intuition. And I'm not gonna, my initial intention with this workshop was to really dive deep into human design authority and how to use that. But I'm really feeling this language of the body stuff. So we're really going to get into that a little bit in a moment. So again, that bodily wisdom, connecting with that. Divination tools are very effective, like pendulums, tarot cards, oracle cards, anything like that. Crystals can be really helpful as well. And then there's this, this is a very somatic practice in my opinion, but this exercise of discerning between a full body yes and a full body no. And when we tune into this feeling of yes and this feeling of no, then we can differentiate between the two. And I do want to mention that there is some nuance here. You know, yes versus no is very black and white. And it doesn't really allow for much gray area. But I want to note that sometimes just maybe is okay. And moving forward with that maybe is okay. That for the sake of this exercise, we're really going to be paying attention to that full yes and that full no. So let's just take a quick little break for a moment. Maybe take a quick stretch before we get into this practice. Okay. Ooh. There we go. So this is what we'll be doing next. But for this practice, just go ahead and find a comfortable position. I'm probably seated so that you can put your feet flat on the floor would probably be best. But again, whatever feels most comfortable to you is just great and just fine. So you can go ahead and close your eyes whenever you feel ready. Take a few deep breaths. Inhale and exhale. And think of a decision you've been trying to make. It can be big or small. But if you're not quite familiar with this activity, I would recommend that you pick a smaller decision, like maybe what to eat for lunch, for example, or what to make for dinner. And think of two different options or two different solutions. And bring the first option into your mind and really feel into it. Imagine as though that is the one you've chosen. Notice what it would feel like to experience that option. What it would look like, what it would feel like, what it would sound like, maybe. And notice how your body reacts to it. Notice where in your body you're feeling these sensations or lack of sensations. And then once you have a very clear image of what is going on with that first option, how it feels in your body, move on to the second option. Again, bring it to mind. Imagine as though that is the one that you've chosen and you are now experiencing in your reality. And notice what it would feel like to experience that option and how your body is reacting to it. Notice where you might be feeling different sensations. Notice any emotions that come up. And then when you feel complete with this process, go ahead and slowly come back to the present moment. You can pause here if you want to explore this a little further. And, again, if you have your journal with you or a piece of paper and you like to reflect by writing, some questions that I would encourage you to explore are, what were the differences in the two experiences? Did you notice any contractions? Maybe any tightness or tension that came up when you were experiencing an option? And notice if you felt more open or expansive or relaxed during an option. I think generally the options that make us feel more expansive and open, maybe excited or relaxed, those typically are the ones that I choose to pursue. And everyone has to make that decision for themselves. But I think through this process, this yes versus no practice, you can start to get more in tune with what you really want, right? And this is something that you can absolutely do on your own. It probably doesn't even take 5 minutes really to just sit down, close your eyes, breathe, and notice what is happening as you consider each option. So now let's get into this idea of connecting with the body, connecting with the language of the body as a means of connecting with the intuition and developing that sixth sense. So the first thing that we really are going to look at is cultivating awareness around what's happening in our body. And as we develop this, we're increasing the ability, our ability to notice what's happening inside of our body. And this includes any sensations we might be feeling, any changes in temperature or pressure, on and on. It might even include a tightening of muscles or a change in how we are holding our body. So for example, if we start to close our body language off and start to feel really tight and contracted, this might mean that we feel unsafe or that we feel very uncomfortable with something that's going on. Whereas if we notice that our posture starts to open up, our heart space, our chest opens up, then that might mean that we are experiencing something that feels good or feels safe or feels expansive to us. I do also want to just mention here the power of changing our posture, right? This isn't really too related to this topic here, but I do want to mention that we don't always have to just be in reaction or in response, but that we can also actively change our reality and what's happening within us. So it might that process might look something like this. Like we notice ourselves closing off, we bring awareness to it, we notice it, and then we can open back up. And this is something that I do regularly. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in our integration section. So another important piece that I've already touched on a little bit is this importance of perceiving what's happening through, through non-judgment, through compassion, and maybe even through some neutrality. Because sometimes we can start to view certain sensations in our body as negative or wrong, right? Or certain ones as right or good. And this can block us from truly understanding them or exploring them on a deeper level, because we'll already have this idea of what it means. And if we already have this idea of what it means, then we aren't really approaching it through a lens of curiosity, because it's this curiosity that allows us to go deeper and really explore the root cause of what's going on, right? And it also allows us to accept what's happening and observe from more a state of love and compassion. And this, I feel like, really empowers us to interpret the signals that we're receiving in a more accurate way. And this takes practice, of course. It takes consistent practice over time. And this can happen in, a special container like this, where we're, practicing together, or it can happen in your morning routine or as part of your meditation practice. But it can also happen throughout your day, just as you're living. And this is my favorite way of doing this work, is weaving it into everyday life. Because I feel like that's that weaving into mundane moments and like everyday kind of occurrences is when you really start to embrace the tools, right? And embrace this way of living. And this could look like just taking a moment to tune into what you're experiencing in your body in any given moment. Or if you're making a decision, just taking a moment to think about, oh, like, what is this going to feel like? Is this really in alignment? Right. Another piece of this is noticing how your body reacts to certain stimuli. And different stimuli can include different types of food, different environments, different types of music, maybe different textures, right? And one thing I will say about this is that once you are aware of how your body reacts to certain foods, you will never experience processed and junk foods the same again. I actually had an experience earlier this week where I was really hungry and I was offered some, those like sandwich crackers with the kind of fake cheese in the middle of them. And I knew as I was opening the pack that I was not going to feel great afterwards, but I did it anyway, because that's just how life is sometimes, but I took that first bite. And after that first cracker, I already could feel the inflammation occurring in my body. And as you do develop more body awareness, you become more sensitive to those kind of things. And some people see sensitivity as a bad thing. But when you know how to respond to it in a healthy way, I think it is truly a gift. I think it's really a wonderful thing to have access to, because it's the way, let me just say this, the way that you use it is very powerful. The way that you choose to move forward with it and respond to it determines, whether it is a good thing or a bad thing. Or at least to you in your life, And then, yeah, the last little piece that I'll add in here is that through connecting and developing greater awareness of our body and understanding the signals that our body is sending us, we can understand better how trauma is manifesting in the body. And to me, this is a really big piece of any kind of healing that I'm doing or that I'm doing with clients. And what many people don't realize is that unprocessed trauma, whether it be big or small or mild or intense, whatever it is, it stays in the body. If it hasn't been released or processed, it stays in the body. And it can manifest itself physically. And this can look like anything from chronic pain to that one spot that you always feel tense in, headaches, jaw problems, anything like that. And when we understand this mind-body connection, we get better at interpreting what's going on in the physical and energetic bodies. I'm sorry, don't mind the phone ringing. It'll be over in a moment. But yeah, when we understand this mind-body connection, we understand what we need to work through. We have a greater understanding of what we need to work through. And we also become better at identifying where conditioning might be showing up for us, where limiting beliefs might be showing up for us. And this is something that we're going to go into in next week's workshop. And I am very excited about it because we'll actually be having a guest speaker, Bryn DeVore, who is a mindset coach, and will be guiding us through some practices for dealing with conditioning and limiting beliefs. But that's for next week. So I have a little practice for us today that is all about connecting with our body and learning to listen to the language of our body. So I'm just going to take another quick little break because I have a little bit of a stuffy nose today. So while I am breaking, go ahead and find a comfortable position for yourself. Maybe take a little, stretch break or movement break, whatever you need. Grab a sip of water, maybe grab a blanket for this, whatever is going to get you into that, cozy, relaxed space. So let's say 30 to 60 seconds. So take just a moment and I'll see you in a sec. All right. And as we're coming back, feel free to close your eyes if you're already in that comfortable position that you want to do this practice in. And let's take a moment to notice the breath. Just bring your awareness to your inhale and your exhale, not forcing anything here. Just allowing it to flow and noticing what's happening in your body. And as you inhale, notice any sensations that you might be feeling. Notice what's happening. Does your breath feel shallow? Does it feel like there's some resistance to deepening it? Just keep going in and out. And now we'll deepen the breath in 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now return to a deep inhale and a deep exhale at your own pace. And notice what's happening in your body now. What did you experience as we deepened the breath? And just take a moment to sit with these sensations and notice what's happening here. You'll tune into the way energy is flowing within you. Do you feel any tingles? Or maybe any space opening up within you? And now gently press one of your fingers on the palm of your other hand and notice what happens. Notice what happens in your body. And maybe you feel something happening in a totally different part of your body than you would expect. But just sit with the sensations you might be feeling for a moment and just observe. And of course, you can continue with this experience for as long as you need or want. But when you're ready, let's just gently shake it out. And you can stay seated for this if you really don't feel like getting up. Just maybe add some shaking, add some gentle movement. Maybe some rolls here, rolling the hips, maybe rolling the shoulders. Then take a deep breath deep into your belly and exhale with a deep sigh. And again, inhaling and exhaling with a deep sigh. Good. Now let's come back to the present moment. You can start to open your eyes. And you can pause here to gently come back or journal if you feel called to as well. Some things you might want to reflect on might be, what sensations were you experiencing during this exercise? Did anything surprise you during the activity? Did you feel any resistance at any point? And the last one, did any thoughts or emotions come up? And again, you can pause here if you want to explore some of these questions. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep going. So now we're getting into the vision part of this workshop. So what does intuition have to do with vision, right? You're probably wondering. When you're more connected with your intuition, you're more connected with the cues and signals your body and sixth sense are sending you, right? We talked about this. And this allows you to be more aware of your desires, your dreams, the things that light you up. And when you allow yourself to receive that information and fully embrace and step into these desires, you expand your understanding of what's possible for yourself. You can also become more aware of the limiting beliefs and conditioning that might be holding you back from fully stepping into it, right? And again, we'll talk more about these topics in next week's workshop on mindset and limiting beliefs. And intuition also helps you get clear on your true why. And what is your why? Your why is the reason that you're doing any of this, right? The reason behind certain habit changes or certain adjustments in your schedule or routine. And when we get clear on our why and really feel aligned with that why, because again, we're listening to our intuition, we're listening to our body. And when we are honoring that, when we are honoring that information that we're receiving and incorporating that into the purpose behind all of these changes that we're making, we're going to be more consistent, we're going to be more motivated. And ultimately, the change that we're creating is going to be more sustainable and more in line with what we really need, what is really going to give us energy, and what is going to continue to lift us up. So I've put here some reflection questions for you to think about over the next week before our next workshop. So question number 1 is, what do you find yourself daydreaming about? So next time you find yourself daydreaming, just notice, where did your mind go? And then the second question, if you were to ask yourself what you would like your life to look like, what comes up for you. And there's no right or wrong answers here. This is just kind of, on your own, exploring some things before we really dive deep into some of this next week. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how do we actually apply this information to our daily lives and make it actionable. And this is what integration is all about. It's about how are we actually incorporating these tools, these concepts into our lives, and how are we using them to make our lives better? So we've talked a little bit about aligned action. This is really taking action based on the information that we're receiving. Right? It's taking action based on what feels good, feels right, and is actually going to nourish us, is actually going to give us energy, all that good stuff. And making these decisions can be tough, right? Making decisions based on the information that we're receiving from our intuition, from our higher self, and from our body is tough because sometimes it takes a great deal of courage to actually listen. And there could be limiting beliefs or conditioning, social conditioning from our environments growing up, from our families, our friends, that get in the way of listening, right? And we're gonna get so far further into this in next week's workshop, so I don't want to say too much today. But the last piece that I'll leave you with, and I feel like all of this is important. I feel like I say this is the most important piece so often, but really making time to check in with yourself and making the time and space to, incorporate this kind of body awareness into your practice, into your daily routine, and into your daily life. So it's really important to make time to check in with your body and your intuition and just kind of take inventory of where you're at. And like I said before, we want to approach this work from a place of non-judgment. Non-judgment for ourselves, non-judgment for others, non-judgment for what we're feeling, etc. Because as we're taking inventory, it can be kind of scary to look at our lives very honestly and say like, wow, this is not working, right? That can be terrifying sometimes. So in order to make it more manageable, make it feel more safe, and make it more practical, right? We want to approach it without judgment and with lots of compassion for ourselves because, as we go through this life, I really believe we're doing the best we can with the information and the resources we have. And it's important to recognize that as you go through this process and do this work. So if you have any questions, I highly encourage you to contact me afterwards. If you're, I think most of you will be watching the replay on this. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, even if it's just an observation you made or something that resonated with you, even if it's not necessarily a question. Please reach out. I would love to hear from you and hear what you got out of this workshop and maybe what you're excited to try out in your own life. Just as a quick closing, I have a couple questions and a couple prompts for you that you might want to explore over the next week as you're kind of connecting more with your intuition and learning to listen to it more. So my first question is that you can ask yourself is, what do I need in this moment? and just noticing what comes up for you. And the follow-up of that, am I able to give that to myself in this moment? And if not, am I able to give it to myself later or on another day? And I think what is really interesting about this work is that when we ask ourselves these questions and allow ourselves to look a little bit deeper than what might just be on the surface level, we are able to discover things about ourselves and have mindset shifts and process things at an incredible rate and capacity. And I want to throw in a quick example of, maybe something that would apply to this kind of situation, or a situation that would apply to this line of thinking. So something that I hear a lot is cravings, right? Sugar cravings or salty cravings, any kind of cravings. We all have them, I think. And when you're experiencing that, or if that is something that you experience, you can also apply this to a different situation. Like maybe if you're craving physical touch or if you're craving validation from others. Oh, that's a big one. Probably for a lot of people, I know it is for myself. Tuning in with yourself and asking yourself, what do I actually need in this moment, right? And I think the answer will surprise you. Because if you're craving sugar and you ask yourself, what do I really need in this moment? It might be comfort, right? It might be joy or relaxation or an escape. Or if you're craving validation from other people and you ask yourself, what do I really need in this moment? Maybe it's safety. Okay. Or maybe it is comfort. And I highly encourage you to explore this on your own. I think this question, what do I actually need in this moment, is such a powerful one because it gets us thinking outside of the box a little bit about our experience, about what we're experiencing and what we think we need versus what we actually need. So I'll just finish off with, let's all give ourselves a little hug today for all the work that we are doing over the next month or two, for all the work that we did today. And thank you so much for being here or for watching the replay. For next Saturday, our workshop is called Mindset Reset. It's all about working through limiting beliefs, tuning into your most authentic expression, and just kind of cultivating more confidence around, accessing that type of expression. Again, we'll be having a guest speaker. We'll be doing some awesome practices and learning some really great tools. So definitely try to be there live. It's going to be really a wonderful workshop and I'm very excited for it. So again, any questions, observations, thoughts, feel free to send them my way and I will see you next week.